Okay.
Okay, so I'm welcoming back Matt Duffy from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, who came and gave us a great talk on redistricting right before redistricting was finished. And so we're thrilled to have him back to discuss with us what it is and how that played out. So thank you for coming, Matt, and take it away.
My pleasure. I'm mostly going to try to spend this time talking about doing the interactive piece, which is like your individual districts and what changed. And we can go and look at the maps and go into depth with any questions you have. But just beforehand, give a real quick overview of just what this whole process is we're talking about. So districts are the physical areas of our state which we elect people from. So the idea is that we, as a collection of towns, come together and choose one person. That person represents us either in Washington, D.C. or in Trenton to speak for us collectively. Every 10 years, we change these districts. We make some of them a little bigger and some of them a little smaller in order to make sure that they all have the same number of people. Right? The idea is that if one district had like 3 people and another district had 1,000 people, the district with 3 people, those 3 people would have much more power. Because if 2 of them decided that they didn't want to vote for whoever their elected representative was, that person would lose, right? So they would need to really listen to all of those 3 people. Where 1,000 people, if 3 people decided to do something, it would be a smaller drop in the bucket. So we want to make sure that the districts are the same size so that theoretically we all have the same amount of power. That's the one person, one vote principle. So we do this every 10 years, the idea being that the census gives us the most reliable data on how many people are in each space. And that's one of the reasons why it was so important to get people turned out and participating in the census in order to accurately reflect how many people are in your area so that your power can be represented in the next round of redistricting. So we just finished in New Jersey. We finished the cycle. It went on for about 6 to 9 months, longer if you count the early preliminary stuff, but really it's a 6 to 9 month process. The census results were released in August, and then the work for there's 2 commissions in New Jersey. Both of them were finished by March. One of them finished in December and one of them finished in March. So very sort of short process, and all of our districts were redrawn, some of them more than others. All of our districts were redrawn, and we have a totally new political map, which will be affecting our state for the next 10 years. So again, we talked about this a little bit, but the key things you need to remember when you're doing these districts, there are other stuff different states have, and even we have in our state. But the core things are the districts have to have the same number of people. The districts have to be one solid shape. So if you started on the border of your district, you could walk around the line of your district and end up where you started. You can't have like part of your district in the way north of the state and then totally disconnected another part of your district in the south of the state. That's not how we do things. The same solid shape. And the core here is that this is about power. Henel Patel, who's the director of the Democracy and Justice Pillar at the Institute, she says the redistricting is the most political thing we do, even more political than like voting. And to some extent, that's true, because redistricting winds up laying the groundwork for all of the other work we wind up doing. You know, all the work you're doing to get out and get people elected and turn people out, so much of that is dependent upon the groundwork that we lay out when we redistrict, and how fair or unfair that groundwork is. Any quick questions on the early review? Then we're going to fly through the early stuff then. So what happened in New Jersey? Again, just a quick overview of our specific process, and then what the actual result was. So again, we do things a little bit differently in New Jersey. One of the unique things, although not that unique, is that we have a separate commission that redraws our congressional seats and one that redraws our legislative seats. So one commission, the Congressional Redistricting Commission, redraws the 12 districts that go to Washington, D.C., right? That's Malinowski's district and Mikey Sherrill and Congressman Donald Payne Jr. and Bonnie Watson Coleman. Those are Congress people. They go and work with Nancy Pelosi in Washington. There are 12 of them in New Jersey. Then we have our 40 the State Legislative Apportionment Commission redraws our legislative district. Those are the 40 districts, our state assembly people and state senators who go to Trenton and work with Assembly Speaker Conklin and Governor Murphy to pass laws in New Jersey for the state of New Jersey. 2 separate commissions. They work effectively at the same time to redraw the same state, but in slightly different spheres. The other very unique way we do things in New Jersey is that we have a political commission, but it's a bipartisan political commission. So half of the commission is made up of Dems. This is true for each. Half the commission is made up of Dems, half the commission is made up of Republicans, and then they either collectively pick a tiebreaker they both can agree on, or if they cannot do that, either the New Jersey Supreme Court or the Chief Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court picks for them. And that happened this year. The Chief Justice picked and the New Jersey Supreme Court picked are the tiebreaker, which for the Congressional Redistricting Commission was Justice John Wallace, and the State Legislative Apportionment Commission was former Judge Philip Kaufman. This is the Congressional Redistricting Commission. Justice Wallace is down there in the lower left, highlighted in green. It's a slightly smaller commission, I believe. Yes, it's slightly bigger commissions, 13 members. We worked hard with groups like you to draw a racial equity map for the Congressional Redistricting Commission that we were very, very proud of. This is what we wanted to see come out of the process, just as a level set. This is what we thought was like the most fair type map we could get. Our state is 50% people of color. It's probably more than 50% people of color with census undercounts. So we wanted 6 out of 12 of our districts to be majority people of color. We thought that would be fair. We wanted to have a Black majority district and Hispanic majority district, which is the same as we have in the current map. We just didn't want to go backwards. Would love an additional Hispanic plurality district, given that the Hispanic population is growing very rapidly. It is now 1/4 of the state. And also drew Asian influence districts. The fastest growing population in our state is the Asian population. We thought it would be wonderful if that community was represented. So we drew 2 Asian influence districts. We thought this was a fair and racially equitable map. We drew it, not just us, but a number of our partners, the Latino Action Network, League of Women Voters, a number of different groups sort of drew this with help and support and input from groups like you, actually. I know we drew a community map together and that went into our drawing of this map. The next was the Legislative Apportionment Commission. Again, it's slightly smaller. The tiebreaker, Philip Parchman, is highlighted in green in the upper left. This was the commission that Senate President Steve Sweeney was on. And he was still on it actually after he lost his seat. He was still on the commission. He was going to be redrawing the seat that he had just lost. And they removed him for the commission, probably partially for that reason, and replaced him with Laura Matos. But you can see there's the Legislative Apportionment Commission is the one that legislators in New Jersey are often the most focused on, because this is the commission that's going to redraw their seats and they get to decide who's on it. So New Jersey legislators get to decide the makeup of the commission that will then redraw the map for New Jersey legislators. So they're very focused on it. We drew a unity map with a number of other coalition partners that, again, we thought was a fair and racially equitable map that kept communities of interest together. It had 20 majority people of color districts. The current map has 15. It had 3 majority Black districts, which we thought was really fair given the Black population is 15% of the state. 4 majority Hispanic districts, 2 Hispanic plurality districts, and 2 Asian plurality districts. So again, we tried to make sure that communities, particularly communities of color, were represented in this map. And again, we also really worked hard to keep communities of interest together. So whether that be there's a community of interest in like Trenton, Lawrenceville, and Ewing. There's the Ramapo Lenape we kept together up in the Mahwah area. So just trying to keeping together Hispanic and immigrant communities in Morristown and Dover. These were things we really wanted to include in our unity map. So that was our goal, was to sort of get to here. And how we did it was and this is part of just a thank you, because I know that you came out and testified. And you helped draw a map, but like we submitted your map along with 49 other community interest maps to the commission, to both the commissions. Hundreds of people came out to testify in favor of racially equitable maps and in favor of their communities of interest. Those were the building blocks we used to draw upon our unity map and our racial equity map. So really a major outpouring of attention and focus for the commission on these things, something that is still not legally required, but we were able to pressure them into having 10 public hearings each. We were able to pressure at least the Legislative Apportionment Commission into releasing a draft map that people could comment on before they wound up voting on it. And just like a much more transparent process this year we've ever had in New Jersey. And I think that people really showed up and participated in a way that says that like they're hungry to be involved in this process moving forward. So that's, again, sort of the process. And now the exciting part is the next, which is what happened. Just roll to the exciting part. So what happened? What changed? On the left is the previous congressional map, both congressional and then legislative. On the left is the previous congressional map. On the right is the new congressional map. The map on the right is the map we have today. So you can sort of see some of the differences, but it's kind of hard to track exactly what has shifted. So we did this. If you are in a purple shaded region, you have a new congressperson. And you can sort of see that like The changes for the congressional map were pretty all over the state. There were some pretty major changes in the Northwest, some pretty major changes in Central Jersey, pretty major changes in the South. Sort of the whole map shifted a bit. And honestly, we were really happy with the way the congressional map turned out. But we didn't get everything we wanted. We never expected to. We didn't get everything we wanted, but the congressional map actually moved really positive in a really positive direction, we thought. So in a lot of ways that relate to racial equity, I know your district particularly was frustrated, but so we wanted 6 districts to be majority people of color. We stuck with 5. 5 is what we currently have now. But one of the districts is very close. So we expect that to be a majority district in the next 10 years. But really the thing for us was that New Jersey's previous congressional map was really bad for racial equity. Like it heavily overrepresented white communities. People of color were a majority in 5 districts, but they barely had any influence in the other 7 districts of New Jersey. And that's not true anymore. So now what you have is we have 9 districts where people of color are significantly represented and have lots of influence in the electoral process, even if they're not a majority. It's a major shift from previously. So that's great. That's something we wanted to see. And I think we would have loved them to get there this round of maps, but I think we expect over the next 10 years that our maps will be, by the time the next round of redistricting comes around, I think these will look like maps that have a majority of seats that match the population of New Jersey in a fair way. So that's good. Major issues. No Asian influence districts. I think one of the things we saw was in both of the maps is that possibly because there aren't any districts that have any, that we don't have any Asian influence districts already. There's no one actively advocating for it because the district doesn't exist. And so no one advocated for it. And so it, except for us, and it didn't wind up coming about, both in the congressional and the legislative side, something we're really disappointed by. And it also sort of shows how inequities can be baked into the system, right? The district doesn't exist now, so there's no one to advocate for the district. So the district continues to not exist, even though the Asian population is the fastest growing population in New Jersey. So you just continue building in these inequities decade after decade. We also saw the elimination of a Hispanic voting age population majority district, which is something we didn't love. So it just tipped under just a little bit, but that's a Voting Rights Act metric is majority. It's still a majority Hispanic district, but it's not a majority voting age population Hispanic district, just something that we found kind of problematic. Things we saw. All right, legislative district. I think my story is that the congressional map, at least in terms of racial equity, was worse. Like the one we previously had was just a much worse map than our legislative map we previously had, which was not that bad. The downside of that being that the congressional map we think got a lot better. The legislative map really didn't get much better at all. It started out in a less bad place, but it really didn't shift all that much in terms of where we wanted it to for racial equity or communities of interest. So we can talk about why that happened in a minute. So what did it look like? There's a shift. And this is exact, actually, because in New Jersey, you cannot split municipalities. So if your municipality is in purple, you are in a new legislative district. One interesting thing to note here actually is how little change there occurred in Central Jersey. It appeared that the parties really didn't want to, like wherever the Central Jersey seats were, the parties wanted to maintain those seats as solidly as they can, as close as they could to what the existing looked like. So they pushed a lot of changes up and a lot of changes down. Morris County experiencing tons and tons of changes, I think you can see, as well as Essex County and Hudson County, some major shifts up in northern New Jersey, and then also some major shifts down in southern New Jersey and like Ocean counties and areas like that. But very little change in Middlesex County, which is sort of fascinating because often you see, as you saw with the congressional map, it's much more, you see it in all North, Central, and South Jersey. Here, North and South Jersey experience changes. Central Jersey, not so much.
Wow.
What does it look like? We moved from 15 districts of majority people of color to 17 districts of majority people of color. But where in the previous map, we hadn't got an additional majority people of color district, but we got a bunch of new influence districts. Here, the way they got to the majority districts was by taking districts that were very close already. They were like strong influence districts and just tweaking them over the edge just a little bit. People of color really only had an additional influence in one more district than they did in the previous map. In the previous map, there were 23 districts for people of color and significant influence. Now it's 24 districts, with 17 being a majority. So just like very small shifts. And why this happened, before we talk about the bad, was largely because in the legislative map, the system actually worked. And by worked, I don't mean like in the way that I think is best. I mean in the way that it was designed. New Jersey's bipartisan system is designed to create bipartisan consensus. And the congressional map was a map where the Democratic commissioners voted with a Republican, or voted with the tie-breaking member, and all the Republicans voted against the congressional map. In the legislative map, the Democrats and Republicans came to a deal. There were some inter-party splits, right? Like there was one Democrat dissenter and one Republican dissenter, but the parties actually came together and both agreed on this map. Wow. So the way that you see them getting to that is when they can agree to make as few changes as possible, right? This map is a map which they are going to try, because I think that's the way you can get to compromise between those two groups, is saying like, we're not going to really change anything. So we had a map that was not terrible for racial equity, and it's still a map that's not terrible for racial equity, but didn't really make any progress, because both parties came together and effectively came to a compromise that held the map as similar as it was previously, is sort of my read of what happened there. But that's the way our process is designed. Our process is designed for bipartisan consensus. Bipartisan consensus happen, in my opinion, tends to hold in the status quo. So so then some issues with this. There was already a majority Black district and a majority Black plurality district. That didn't change. There were 2 majority Hispanic districts and 2 Hispanic plurality districts. That didn't change. So the map sort of stayed the same in terms of all these racial equity metrics. Again, no Asian plurality districts. The Asian population really just wasn't given any attention in this round of maps as well. One of the things we were particularly concerned by was that LD28 went from 57% Black to 72% Black, which really looks like packing. You saw that in the South, you'd say that's packing. Unfortunately, with the current state of the Voting Rights Act, we didn't feel like we had a litigation avenue, given that it appears to be being dismantled from the Supreme Court down. So not really anything we can do about it. We felt we could do about it, but it's something that we sort of like were uncomfortable by in the legislative maps. So the overall, thank you for letting me blab on for 20 minutes. In facilitation training back in the day, I learned that you can talk for 20 minutes before people totally stop paying attention. So I think I've hit exactly that mark. Any thoughts or any questions? And then I figured we could do some interactive map exploration and actually go into your region and see how the maps actually changed.
That's good, because today I was discussing with somebody and we were arguing about who's the congressional person for the, not arguing, but discussing who was the congressional person for the district. So that would be helpful. Does anybody feel free to just jump in, because all of you are off camera, and there's only 4 of us to ask Matt questions. So anybody have a question, feel free. In the District 8, or the district that the packing district,
28.
The one that you said looked like packing, not necessarily was. So where is that district? That's 72%.
It's Essex County. It's Irvington, part of Newark, Hillside, Union Township, Maplewood as well, South Orange Village, Elizabeth, Roselle. Where previously it actually went north. So it was Irvington, parts of Newark, Bloomfield, Glen Ridge, and Nutley. Now it's a totally different district.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, well, that definitely sounds like packing. And my other question was, you said something about District 7, and you just said something like we weren't happy with District 7 or something like that. What'd you say?
I know that many groups that we worked with were upset with the fact that, like, many people came out and testified to wanting to maintain District 7 in its current political configuration, but District 7 got significantly more conservative.
Yes.
In a way that I know that many people came out and said, don't do that to the Congressional Commission. And then that's what they did.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, okay, because that's my complaint about it. Yes.
Yeah. It was probably, it was one of the number one things that people came out and testified for to the Congressional Redistricting Commission.
Yeah. And then the seven, and then he got Warren and Sussex, which are almost all Republican. So, yeah.
So do you want to look at the congressional map or the legislative map
Well,
first?
both. I actually want to see both because the congressional was the one we were talking about first
Okay, let's do that.
today.
I think maybe Maureen had a question.
Maureen, do you have a question?
Hi there. I hate to ask a question because I was late showing up to the meeting.
Five of us.
So would just be interested. I was on a call earlier with Joan today and I'm not up to snuff on this, but my congresswoman has been Bonnie Coleman Watson. And I learned today that she is not anymore, which I'm happy about, but I was interested in how that happened.
So you are in
Scotch Plains.
you're in Scotch Plains.
Yeah.
I could show you on the map.
And I like your hat.
Thank you. So you are now in Malinowski's district. So previously you were at the very edge of District 12. So at the very, very edge of it, which looked like this.
I never quite understood it. I moved here 2 years ago and my neighbors were Malinowski and I get all of his emails, but
well, I think Bonnie Watson Coleman has, and this again is, I don't entirely know. I know that Bonnie Watson Coleman has a really strong political base or a personal connection, or I don't exactly know what it is, to Plainfield and North Plainfield. So like it's very important personally or politically, I don't know which, for her to have those parts of her district, but her district sort of is more centered around like the East Brunswick, North Brunswick, Franklin Township sort of area.
Right.
So it sort of has always snaked up a bit to include that area, which is important.
yeah, it's like a little bit of a spike, but does that still exist or no?
It does, but it's less spiky. I think her district also potentially had to either grow or shrink. I mean, a lot of these are population changes.
Because my neighbors across the street were Malinowski.
Yeah. So you were, yeah. So Scotch Plains used to be divided, where part of it, I can see literally where you live then. Here's the line. Where part of Scotch Plains was in Malinowski districts and part of Scotch Plains was in Bonnie Watson Coleman's district. And now all of Scotch Plains is in the same district together, as well as Fanwood. But Plainfield and North Plainfield are still in Bonnie Watson Coleman's district.
Right. Right.
So all of Scotch Plains is together and all of Plainfield's, so my mother-in-law lives in Plainfield. And
Yes.
so she still has Bonnie Watson Coleman.
Yes.
Okay.
Instead of splitting up Scotch Plains, your district, which used to stop, right? The District 7 used to stop at like Clark, Cranford, Kenilworth, and part of Union. It actually now it's lost Union and Cranford and Garwood and Kenilworth, and instead it goes all the way to the ocean, actually to Linden and to Rahway. So you picked up Rahway and Linden has been split instead of Scotch Plains being split. Linden is now split between.
All right. So it's the bottom part of Linden.
Yes, it's most of Linden. It's like 75.
So if we picked up Linden and Rahway, does that mean that we picked up more Democratic diversity votes?
You picked up a lot. I mean, so the district got more conservative writ large, because as you can see, and I'll move the city things out. The big thing that happened actually was that you picked up a huge swath in the west. So see where this portion of Western New Jersey, where District 5 is, not a lot of people live.
Yeah.
Those Republican regions of the state. Also, just to say again that we are a 501c3. I'm not talking about who should get elected. I'm not giving any preference. I'm just examining the data.
Yeah. Got it.
We are
previously, this was not part of your district. It was part of Gottheimer's district.
Right.
Gottheimer's district, because so many moved to his area, it needed to geographically shrink. And so that part of the district was added to Malinowski's district. So this is a lot of new conservative voters. So any new left-leaning voters that were added by moving to Linden probably outweighed by the new conservative voters, which have been added, going all the way up to because this district now goes all the way up to Walpeck, all the way down to West Almwell. This district is just like the vast majority of it is sort of this big swath of Western New Jersey, and then it comes snakes all the way over here to Linden.
Sea to shining sea. Can
Yeah.
you, and I think you said in the last time that we can only have 12 districts, or can we get more if we have more population, we'll get more, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, was it danger? People thought New Jersey might be a danger at losing a district, but we had such consensus turnout that we did not.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, when people, I mean, I guess it's not, every state is not the same, but like when you lose a district, who gets to pick it? Whose district gets lost?
Depends on. Yeah.
It's on the commission, so they just move the lines around. Okay.
Exactly.
Because I remember lots of talk about whose district should disappear if, and how they
Yeah.
would.
10 years ago, New Jersey lost a district. I think we used to have 13 districts. And the tie-breaking member of the Congressional Redistricting Commission's big thing was he wanted that district to be lost in northern New Jersey, because northern New Jersey 10 years ago was the region that had lost population, right? It was the opposite this time around, but it was also a different tiebreaker. So this time around, right, South Jersey and West Jersey really were the areas that lost population, and North Jersey, particularly the areas around like Essex County and Hudson County, gained population. So sort of different.
Very interesting.
Hard to believe, looking at those maps, that a district like 8 or 10 that's over, I guess, in like Bergen County area, has the same number of people as District 7, which is so gigantic, and those districts are so much smaller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's good to know that that's why the lines move where they move, is to try to keep the same number of people per district.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at your legislative map.
Mhm.
So let's see. So if you're in Scotch Plains, you're in District 20. You were in District 22, and now you are still in District 22. Looks like District 22 a little bit. District 22 used to go all the way down to Middlesex and Greenbrook and Dunellen, and those are no longer in the district. And instead, you've picked up Cranford and Roselle Park.
Okay, 22.
Pretty
20
similar.
Well, what's 21? What? Oh,
21. Yeah, we can do 21. So 21. Again, you're sort of in that central New Jersey area. You're at least peripheral.
Yeah.
And again, from what I understand from hearing the people, is that the power base of particularly the Democratic Party is being has, particularly with the decline of Steve Sweeney and that whole Southern Dem machine, the power base of the Democratic Party has shifted into Middlesex County and Central Jersey, which is one of the reasons that this is like a total behind the scenes, nobody knows, it's a black box. But some people in the media and others have commented that one of the reasons the legislative map might look like how it is it shows the political power of the the Central Jersey Democratic Party. Just be a very powerful group right now. I mean, both the Assembly, the Speaker from the Assembly and the Senate President are from Central Jersey. I think it might both be from Middlesex County. It's just considered a very powerful area.
The Senate President is Lyndon.
Yeah.
Atari. Yeah,
and Conklin's also, I don't know where it's from, but it's from a similar area. So this area is very powerful in the state legislative stuff. So your districts really didn't shift that much. Just 21.
Coughlin's in Middlesex.
Yeah, District 21 a little bit in that you.
Amboy.
Yeah, you lost Cranford,
right,
and Roselle Park, and you picked up Bernardsville, back in Gladstone, and Chatham Township.
And where did Cranford go to? Which one?
We went to 22.
Oh, 22. Okay. All right.
So the Chathams were divided?
The Chathams used to be divided and they no longer are. There was some testimony actually was around that.
Okay.
The Chathams are together now.
Wow, that's cool.
But in a lot of ways, these districts have remained the same. I think they were sort of town places that were added were there to sort of keep the population, equal population, but also to try to create a district that was comfortable for the incumbents that already are there. So I think District 21 is actually pretty competitive.
When do they decide to split a city versus keeping it together?
So you're actually not allowed to split cities legislatively except for Newark and Jersey City, because Newark and Jersey City are each so big that you cannot fit them all in one legislative district. So you need to keep all the towns together, but congressionally, it's really just a one person, one vote thing. So congressionally, the standard is you need to have it as mathematically, the congressional districts need to be mathematically as close to perfect as you can make them, which means that like sometimes you grab a house from across the street. Like you make it really messy sometimes if you need to, because the districts literally need to be the exact same number of people. It's a constitutional standard. Legislatively, there's more flexibility. It's just with the standards that were set by the New Jersey Supreme, the United States Supreme Court like 50 years ago. Legislatively, there's more flexibility. So in New Jersey, for example, we have a law that we have to keep our towns together, and that means you can't split any towns legislatively. But you can split school districts, right? Because school districts sometimes span different stuff. There's different ways you can still split up communities, but you're not allowed to split the town legislatively, except for Newark and Jersey City.
For the legislative, but not the congressional.
Yes, exactly.
Right. You just said that. Okay. Wow.
Yep. That's where we are.
Interesting stuff.
Mhm.
It is interesting. And it is, you did a good job. Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You guys did a great job getting the as much change as you could wring out.
We did our best. And, we kept a number of districts together, like Dover and Morristown are now together. That was something we heard. We really did try hard to keep communities of interest together in a lot of different ways. It happened in a lot of places and it didn't happen in a lot of places. It was, but it was the area I think we were most successful, is we were able to keep a lot of communities of interest together.
Well, that's really, it shows that it can work.
Oh yeah.
If people, testify, if they are engaged, it can work.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and there's studies that have shown that. Like I think we talked about that last meeting. Was the most impactful testimony is the most local testimony, right? The testimony that can be like, I think that I want my town to be with this separate town, or like my community should be specifically in this way. Those are the type of micro changes that they think they find easier to make. It's hard to do things like I want my district to be like this, or I want my district to be like that. That testimony is just from studies less likely to be incorporated because it's harder for them to do when it's so big. To give them credit, and it's also easier for them to not be held accountable because you can sort of broadly say, yes, I tried. We were pushing for racial equity, and they use the same language that we use to draw a map that looks very different from our map, because those broad principles you can sort of apply to a lot. You can interpret a lot of different things as satisfying those principles. The micro stuff is hard though, right? The Remapool and are in this region, you should keep them together is a very specific thing. You can't be like, well, we kept them together in principle. No, you either keep them together or you don't. So is always the most impactful.
That's awesome. I was gonna the thing about, because I think that's what those of us from Social Justice Matters did, was talked about keeping Scotch Plains and Fanwood together, because we are essentially one town. And
it's together in both. In Scotch Plains and Fanwood are completely together and not split up in both the new congressional and legislative.
right? So,
But previously Scotch Plains was split, so.
Yeah.
Now
And now
we're
it's together.
Mhm.
And it's very entertaining because people would say to you, oh, and I would say, well, are you going to vote for so-and-so? And they would say, this is personal. This is not about social justice matters. Are you going to vote? And then they were like, well, that's not my congressman. I was like, oh, that's right. You live on that street.
I mean, it always happens to some town, right? Like Linden is now going to have some of that.
Yes, exactly.
You can't ever totally avoid it if you want to hit that perfect population equity. You just
Right.
gotta draw the lines as fairly as you can.
It was interesting. So what did you think of the Institute think of the tiebreaker? Did you think he did a good job?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's so hard to judge because it's like on what metric. I mean, I think the legislative tiebreaker did exactly his job. My issue is more with the system as it is designed, right? But like for what the system was designed to be, which is to promote bipartisan consensus, Philip Karchman did an overwhelmingly masterful job at scaring the crap out of both. Appears, again, I don't know, but it appears he scared the crap out of both parties that they would not like whatever decision he made if they didn't come together, and force them to sort of come together on a consensus map. And that is what the system is supposed to do. So
That's interesting because I think when he made his opening statement, I think I could go down and go, yes, 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 to all of his statements. And I'm like, okay, let's see how this turns out.
yeah. Yeah, I'm curious if they had not reached consensus, what map would he have pushed, right? Like, would he have pushed his own map, and would that map have been closer to, for example, maybe our unity map than the map that came out? But I think his job was to promote bipartisan consensus, and like ultimately, they didn't even need him, right? Like, if 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans voted on this map together, right? He could have voted no. He could have abstained, and the map would have still passed. They only needed 6.
Right.
So like,
Yes, well, power loves to keep power. Well, that's fascinating. Oh,
the maps in the chat too, if you have any interest in checking them out.
yes, thanks. I have to
So
figure.
make an official thank you very much to Matt Duffy from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice for this presentation this evening. We're gonna load this up to our YouTube page and send the link out to our members so that they can access this if they're interested in seeing it at a later date. And I am gonna stop the recording now.
Good. And